Today we're going to be transforming this little built-in desk area in the Hot Mess Lake House into a beverage station. So this is what we're starting out with. And then I did do this project, start it while I was doing the kitchen, but I wanted it to be a separate video because there are lots of things that we had to do to make this little tiny area come to life. We took everything off, and of course there was more wallpaper, because why wouldn't there be? I'm 90% certain that there's probably layers of wallpaper underneath all of the blue original paint. But you know what? That's not something I really want to find out. So anyway, I cut in with my trim brush, and then I just rolled on a few coats of white paint, the same white paint that I had put everywhere else, and that immediately made everything look better. Then it was time to demo this little desk. Now, I did want to keep the top piece, but I wasn't really sure how everything was put together. The top just came right off. It wasn't screwed in. And then this was actually super flimsy. It was like one screw into the wall and it came right out. Then I needed to remove the flooring that was underneath it so that we could get everything good and ready to go. I really wanted to put the fridge on this side, but after fitting everything in, I knew I was going to have to flip-flop it. So I just got these pre-assembled cabinets that are ready for paint from Home Depot, and that's what I am going to be using. I couldn't find the exact cabinets that were already in my kitchen, but you know what? It was close enough, and honestly, nobody will probably notice except me, and now that I told you that. Anyway, I did need to take off some of this lift part because the new cabinet was a lot higher, and it's kind of halfway hiding our outlet, which is a whole situation. But anyway, the floor was super uneven in here, so we had to mess around with that a lot. And because the outlet was a little bit covered, I just cut one of these covers and screwed that right on. It's not touching anything in the back, so it should be good. Anyway, then I got some primer. I'm using the Zinsser Bin 123 shellac based primer, just like I use everywhere else, cutting in with my trim brush and then use my tiny little foam roller. Now, the thing was, I was definitely running out of it as I was doing this project, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, am I gonna have to stop for one tiny little drawer and go get more? But luckily, I was able to power through and use literally all of the last drops of the can to make this happen. Hindsight's 2020, but I definitely should have painted all of this, the whole cabinet, before I put it in. That I don't know why I did it this way, but that's the way I chose to do it. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, after I let that cure for 24 hours, I went on with my first coat of my cabinet paint, which I'm using Advanced by Benjamin Moore. Now, cutting in again with my favorite trim brush and my tiny little foam roller, and I didn't have any paint trays, so I just used a plastic plate because, you know, when you're in the middle of a project, you don't want to stop to go get stuff when you could just make whatever you have in your house work. Am I right? Anyway, went on with the first coat for the drawers as well. And I will say, I think I probably should have done a light sanding because these didn't come out as shiny as my other cabinets, but it is what it is. I went on with the second coat. I think it's just because, they're primed, or they're ready to paint, they are sanded, ready to go, but yeah, I wish I would have done a light sanding after I put on the primer, but it is what it is at this point. Tiny little foam rollers are life, and I now found out that they make 6-inch ones. I'm using a 4-inch one, so I will be using that in the future. But anyway, this paint does need 16 hours to cure in between coats, and then it takes about 7 days to fully cure. So you can see when I'm putting the drawers back in, I'm not having them actually touch. It was basically just so that they were up and out of the way. You can handle it within 24 hours and it's dry to the touch, but it has a special curing system, so I let them cure for 7 days. Now I measured a bajillion zillion times, and I'm marking out with painter's tape and my little jig that is actually made for like to mark hardware holes, but it wasn't as long as my hardware. It only went up to like 4 inches, and my hardware is 9 inches. So I just kind of used it as a guide to get my holes even on each side, and then I drilled through and just screwed on the new hardware, which is freaking beautiful, might I add. I kind of wish I would have not, for these big drawers, done it in the middle and done it a little bit closer to the top, because it would have looked better with my other drawers, but I realized my mistake after, so it is what it is. Then we lost a Pop-Tart back there, and we were trying to get it out, but we had to take the mini fridge out anyway, so not too big of a deal. And then it was time to cover this counter in contact paper. Now, you guys haven't seen this, at least on full-length video yet, but I did use this for my table in my dining room, and it turned out really good. So I put it over, this is definitely a two-person job because this is 39 inches long. It's hard to handle by yourself, but honestly pretty simple to work with. Now my sides and everything are not as good as on my table, because remember how I had to take that stuff off of the backing? Well, the back of this is definitely not super flush or flat, and it's a little crusty, so tucking it under it was a little bit more difficult than on the previous project that I used this for, but still really easy to work with, and luckily it's going to be sitting on that, so I don't think that we're going to have any issues, at least crossing our fingers. But this matte contact paper makes the marble look so much more realistic, and I pushed everything down on the front. I basically wrapped the corners kind of just like a present, and then I do wish I would have wrapped this under, but like I said, it wasn't super even, and I was a little worried that it would bubble up, so I just cut off the excess with my X-Acto blade. The underneath is not like super flat or stickable. I did put some painter's tape just to make sure it was sticking, but definitely not as good as like the flat laminate top. So I just wanted to make sure that it was actually going to hold up. Dustin put it back on, and here are the before and afters.